Welcome to this episode of the Inner Circle podcast, where cinematography and filmmaking meets leadership and wellness. I'm one of your hosts, Lydia Hurlbut, and
And I'm Shane Hurlbut, an ASC cinematographer, and let's get into it. What do we got cooking today? What is this episode's all about?
this episode is all about members submitting their questions. And we love these episodes because this is your chance to really pick our brains and learn from one another, because you always learn with every question. So let's get into it. We're going to start with a really great question that came from Patrick Hughes. And Patrick, I really appreciate this question because it is about camera emotion. So, techniques to enhance emotions in a drama about grief. I'm currently working on a short which tells the story of an elderly man named John as he grapples with the devastating loss of his wife, Mary. The film explores a wide range of emotions: loneliness, grief, isolation, anxiety, and moments of bittersweet joy through flashbacks of happier times. It is only 11 pages in one location, John's home. We have a lot of shots where John reflects living in the home without his just passed wife, her belongings still throughout the house. He's also suffering from Alzheimer's disease. As the cinematographer, I want to use every tool available to visually amplify these emotions and immerse the audience in John's story. The film is divided into 4 key parts: showing his loneliness and grief, 2 separate flashbacks, happier times, his daughter visiting him with a happier tone to end. I've been thinking keeping the camera back in the first part of the film so we have a more observational view of John's life, making him small in the frame and framing him through doorways and corridors to make him feel trapped. Using locked off shots with very little camera movement, and if it does move, it's very subtle. After the first flashback to happier times, I'm thinking about moving the camera closer to him, using wider lenses but closer so we still have a feeling of isolation. It all comes to a head after the second flashback. He has an anxiety attack. I was thinking about using fast cuts on longer lenses and potentially some Vaseline on a clear filter, extreme wide angle lenses in his face, etc. For the flashbacks, I'm thinking about using warmer tones of light, haze, and diffusion filtration on the lens. Also more camera movement, nice movement, and handheld so we have more energy and life in these scenes. I would love thoughts on it, and if I'm going in the right direction with this, any help would be amazing. Next step is to dissect the script to build a shot list.
This is a great question. This could be a masterclass in how to really show how you develop camera emotion and really attach that camera emotion to what the character is feeling. That's one thing that I try to do in every project I go through. I actually create rules of engagement. So I'll take a character who, let's say, take fathers and daughters, for example. I had Russell Crowe's character when he was in control and he was firing on all cylinders. He was center punched and he was, always in the center of everything. When he started to have these kind of manic seizures and everything, I started to weight the frame. So he would go to either hard left or hard right with a lot of foot room or a lot of headroom, depending on what sent him into that seizure. Like if it was a moment where the person just told him he was going to sue him and take him to court and take his daughter from him and everything. I left a lot of headroom because of or a lot of foot room, so it felt like the frame was really on top of his mind and his head and his emotion. So who was the question?
Patrick.
Patrick, your instincts are spot on. That whole idea of shooting a frame within a frame and having the camera completely locked off and very distant is going to show that loneliness very beautifully. I think in your flashbacks, the idea of warmth and kind of handheld and free, you got to juxtaposition these emotions. So the happier times with his wife, when she was alive, everything should feel handheld, wide angle, pushed in close, much more intimacy. Don't use long lenses. Feel like you're just immersed with the emotion and the happiness of that time. Maybe a little diffusion would be good on the lens to make things glow and maybe bloom a little more. So that's kind of the instincts for your flashbacks. So it should have a lot of energy. Then you go in. I'm about ready to sneeze.
I can tell. Sorry about that.
Oh, God.
Are you good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Then you go into after the first flashback, you said you wanted to get a little closer. So I would kind of lose the frame within the frame like you're doing, but maybe depending on the emotion, the wide angle pushed in close is going to work really well with intense shallow depth of field. Because then you're going to still feel the loneliness and the walls, kind of caving in on you, but it's going to be much more immersive and more intense. So in the beginning, it's really great. You're kind of the stoic kind of shots where you just feel the loneliness and all that. Then after that first flashback, when we get in there, now you use the shallow depth of field. You could even use, if you don't have lenses that go down to a 1.3 or a 2, then you can use the glass with the Vaseline for sure. You could use Lens Baby. There's the Sweet lens, which has the center focus in the center, and everything on the outside goes. There's also the Swirl Lens Baby, and those are really inexpensive lenses. So you could use those instead of the Vaseline, and the glass is an old technique that is really good, but it's definitely time consuming because if you don't get it right, then you have to, clean it all off or get another, make sure if you are going to go down that road, get 4 or 5 different optical flats because anytime you change a lens, you have to do a different Vaseline. So what I did on music videos is if I had wide, medium, and tights, and I got different optical flats, and I designed the Vaseline for a tight lens, a medium lens, and a wide lens. And those slid out of the matte box, and that was something that I would just hold off to the side. They were marked, T, M, and W in the corner in black Sharpie. And so my team knew, all right, I'm going to the 85 mil. They knew they would grab the one that was labeled T, and that had the perfect Vaseline on it. So if you are going to go old school, then I would suggest that. So it enables you to, get to be efficient on set. The other thing you can do is use macro lenses. The 60 millimeter macro is one of the greatest lenses because you can get very close and you don't need to use like a Lens Baby or anything. The macro lens itself is going to throw the focus extremely out in the background. But the Lens Baby is definitely a unique effect. You have to decide if that's what you like. The Petzval-Lux effect, which is swirling bokeh, can also be done with Lens Baby, so you don't have to get the very expensive Petzval-Lux lenses. You can get the Lens Baby and use the swirl. You have there's a sweet, there's the swirl, there's the edge, and then there's one other one. So there's like 4 different things, and each
Options.
one
Okay.
does a different thing. The edge gives you the ability to throw just a half of the frame out of focus, or the bottom of the frame, or the top of the frame. The sweet is the center's in focus and everything else is out of focus. The swirl is the center is in focus and everything swirls, so you get swirling bokeh. So that's something you could do. You could try the macro lenses. You could go with the Vaseline, or you could go with lenses that just have an intense shallow depth of field, like the K35s or the Kawas, that can really feel like the walls are closing in. Then when you go to the next flashback, which you're going to use the golden tones, a little diffusion, interactive, very active camera, very, happy times. What was the fourth description
His
of that
daughter
emotion?
visiting him with a happier tone to end.
Okay. So I think also in his home, it would be nice to do it very kind of not clinical, but kind of neutral. So when you go to the flashbacks, it has the warmth and maybe a little desaturation in the, so for when the first 2 times you go back and forth to him, you're in a desaturated world that's very neutral. The 3rd time you go back to him, that's when you would want to have the daughter come in, a little happier times. Then I would say I would increase the saturation. I would actually inject a little warmth into the tones, into the highlights. You don't have to make it look like the flashbacks, but just give it a little warmer tone in the highlights, maybe a little cooler cyan in the shadows. And that will give more of a kind of feeling and happy vibe. You could add maybe just a little diffusion, like my digital diffusion, that just, it's invisible, but it just takes the edge off of it. So maybe you go starker, so no filtration with the first 2 ones. So you do the wide, isolated ones, very stark, very sharp. Then the next ones you're going with the macro, very sharp on the face, but the world's going out of focus in the background. And then the next time, maybe a lighter diffusion to just soften the edges ever so slightly, keep it just a little warmer in the highlights and a little cooler in the shadows.
Okay, so I want to throw in an emotional component, and I want to stay on this emotional theme because I think this is so important, camera emotion, right? Like we could literally talk about this for the entire podcast.
Yes.
But the one thing that I know, having experienced grief or having helped friends through grief as an emotion, is that grief hits at really strange and unexpected times, and there's almost an imbalance that you feel when you're in grief mode. And so I wonder how to reflect that as a cinematographer, and it correlates to the imbalance that you feel with Alzheimer's, because remember, the character also has Alzheimer's disease. So what's really interesting about Alzheimer's is your brain and your memory are there, and then all of a sudden it's very disorienting because your memory's gone, and it can be very sharp. It can come on sharply at times and unexpectedly, where you're just going about your day and then all of a sudden you don't remember something or you don't know who somebody is, depending on where you are in Alzheimer's. So I think both of those facets of the character, in what way could we maybe destabilize and also understand it's kind of like a roller coaster grief? Because not only does it hit you at strange times, but there's an intensity with emotion that comes with it where you literally become overcome and you learn to live with grief, especially like your wife of years, but it's not as though you ever get over it.
No, grief you could do specifically one of the things that I did and this wasn't to show grief, but now I see how I could use it as that.
Yeah.
In Mr. 3000, Bernie Mac is when he finally goes back to the game and he's starting to get his stride, he starts to read the pitcher. Good hitters can read a pitch. They know exactly what the guy's going to throw. And it takes a very experienced eye to see how the pitcher grips the ball. And pitchers have now become very accustomed to not showing what they're doing.
Right.
But there was in the movie there was the way that he gripped the ball that he saw that he did. Knew he was going to throw a curveball. So what I did is I used swing and tilt lenses, but I moved the swing, tilt, and shift in the shot. So the whole image went laterally across because it's a bellows system and you're moving a piece of glass inside of the bellows, you can literally pan the camera. So all of a sudden it would go like that. So that would feel like, the mind is in sync and then all of a sudden it's not, right? So you could use that because most of the time, and this was something that I remember when I was talking to Charles Stone, the director, he's like, how are you going to show that he's really focusing in on that? And I go, I'm going to move the swing and tilt and the shift in camera. And he goes, has this ever been done before? And I go, I don't know. I did it on a music video before, but I've never done it on a feature film. And when I started doing it, he was like, oh my God, that looks like his Hawkeye. He's like zooming in on this to really see the intensity, right? So you could use this for grief as well because you could use because you're moving the lens like this, and like that.
So for those of you that are listening to this, you're moving it
You're moving
horizontally.
it up and horizontal, vertical, and this axis, whatever the hell, you're panning the lens.
But or laterally.
In the bellows, you're not panning the camera, you're panning the lens. So I could go up and down, and however that fit in the film plane, you're literally floating within these bellows. It's almost like an old, large format camera. And that is literally moving around. So you're moving that focal plane. So as you shift it down, the top will go out of focus. As you shift it up, the bottom goes out of focus. As you move to the right, then the left side goes out. So it's like counters everything that you do. You go right, the left goes out. You go left, the right goes out. So this is all kind of and when you're moving it in the shot and you give a lot of headroom or a lot of foot room and you're chopping him and you're only showing like his eyes or his mouth and then back up to his face and then moving over and putting like a wall, like short-siding him in the shot, that's going to create confusion. That's going to show
for the audience.
Yes, that's what you want. You want the audience to feel like he's feeling. He's confused. His mind was sharp for a second, now it's not. That's one way to handle like the grief and the confusion of Alzheimer's.
I love that. And then what about from We Are Marshall? Is there anything that you can remember? Because that movie had a lot of grief in it. Is there any specific camera and motion techniques that you used to capture the grief?
Not so. I mean, we used a lot of slow-mo. We used. There was not. The grief was kind of. We used shallow depth of field. We used obviously just the crash and what happened and the fire and the POVs and the. I'll never forget one of the spookiest shots I ever did was a 350 mil shot of just the porthole windows that the fire was all coming out of. Know that something was sitting on the other side of that window and he or she was literally torched in flames. Those kind of things really, evoke that type of emotion. I did a lot of it in Crazy Beautiful as well with, I wanted Kirsten Dunst's character. She was an alcoholic. She did drugs. She didn't care about school. She had a very controlling mom and was very all over the place, right?
Yeah.
So when she was in the house that her evil stepmother was now commanding her, the camera never moved. It was
Right.
lock-off shots every single time until Carlos came into her life. And when Carlos
Her
came in,
boyfriend,
her
just so
boyfriend,
everybody knows.
when her boyfriend and when they
Yeah.
started to fall in love, the camera started to move in the home. So he was bringing that to her, so she felt more calm
Yeah.
and his movements, because he was very dedicated. He was taking a 2-hour bus ride every day from East LA to the Pacific Palisades. This is something his mom wanted him to do, didn't want him to go to public school in East LA and get all into the whole gang scene and drugs and everything like that. So she was forcing him to go to this charter school, and that's where he met Kirsten Dunst's character. So his lines of movement were linear. They were like military: left, right, up, down, no diagonal. No handheld.
Yeah.
Okay. Her kind of way when she was out of the house was handheld, a lot of headroom, a lot of footroom, a lot of empty space. And I felt this was kind of like her character. It was, teenagers are all over the place.
All over
And I
the
got
place.
this inspiration from a still photographer called Hero Mix. And she's this Japanese still photographer that never looks through the lens.
Oh, wow.
And that was so unique. And I thought it captured her energy completely. And when I showed John Stockwell the references, he's like, absolutely, that is Kirsten Dunst's character. So, the frame was never comfortable. It was always off frame in some way, sometimes a little Dutched. It just didn't have a grounding. It didn't have a foundation, a brick and mortar foundation. So it was always like her world was on sand.
Okay, so let's go into a few more emotions before we leave this question, because I think that this is very difficult to achieve unless you've had a lot of experience. So
Let's talk about love.
Let's talk about love and fear.
Okay, so
Both.
love emotion is, you can do that very, very elegantly because love always happens where, they're
Next to each
a
other.
love story is
Yeah.
not somebody that's already in love. A love story is somebody that they, from two different sides of the track, and they fall in love, and then,
Or they're very unexpectedly falling in love. Like you
Yes.
would never expect those two people to come together.
Correct.
Yeah.
So what you can do is when they first meet each other, you could do just clean shots, right? So a clean medium and a clean medium and a clean close, clean close. So you're not linking them together. Right now, Lindsay over here has an over the shoulder that has me dirty in the frame. And the same with Taylor, has your shoulder a little bit in the frame while I'm talking. Okay? There's an intimacy that creates. Well, falling in love doesn't want to start with that intimacy. It wants to start where they start to understand each other, start to know each other. Then you would start your camera as a wider over. So there's a big gap in between them. And as they slowly start to fall in love with each other, you can then slowly start to move that camera over closer in line with the other individual. So you're making the frame much more intimate. So my whole face is just letting Lindsay see your golden hair on the side. And then when we eventually completely fall in love, maybe I'm overlapping your face and I'm only seeing half of your face. And then the other camera is doing the same. And that creates this amazing intimacy. You also want to start to lens in more. So in the beginning, you're more longer lens. As they start to fall in love, you start to get more intimate. So you start to move the camera in and go to wider lenses. So you feel really immersed in that love.
So I would argue that love is maybe a little bit more straightforward than grief or fear because it's really about camera positioning.
Yes.
Okay. So,
Fear factor is something that is all about how you want an audience to feel, right? In that emotion. So you're looking at John Carpenter. He was the first person that ever cut 2 holes in a sheet and put them over the camera so it looked like he was looking through the eyes of Michael Myers' mask. This was the first use of POV in any movie, really, where you felt like you were, it wasn't like a privileged POV or a standard POV. There was something in the foreground that was putting you like you were, and he brought in the,
yeah.
and that starts to really engage fear. So POV, looking through something, looking through different, things, and it's like fear on a hostage that has, a blindfold over them, but you can barely see, detail. Not you see the texture of like the fabric, as you're driving up. I remember seeing movies that have done that, and that puts a fear in your mind as well. Handheld is a wonderful camera motion to engage when you're, walking, and say you're walking down a hallway and you're walking with the person, and that handheld nature feels like there could be somebody right over your shoulder or right behind you. And then as the person looks back to check, maybe you hinge back and you don't see anyone, and then you come in and then you're moving it again. And then all of a sudden when you look back, boom, there's somebody. Nosferatu used these ridiculously long pans that just pan so slow, and you were like, oh my God. And then you would just pan into black and you're like, what am I doing? And then you'd pan back, and then all of a sudden the guy was there,
It
and
was so scary.
it's so spooky, so that creates that fear factor, that emotion that you're just on the edge of your seat.
So with fear, because I'm not a cinematographer, is it almost about having the camera precede the person sometimes, and the camera?
You could pull with them and push with them.
Okay.
Over the shoulder's great too, and behind them, because it feels like you could be, that's what John Carpenter was amazing at. He was not the cat jumping through the window kind of
The jump scare.
The jump scare. He was, oh my God, he's right over your shoulder. So you're yelling at the screen. You're seeing the horror, but the person that's going to get stabbed doesn't. Right? That is a whole new type of terror and suspense that he really brought to the forefront. And, I was a huge John Carpenter fan. The Thing, I think, is one of the best horror films ever done because he literally took an animal, a dog, that everyone thinks is the greatest thing in the world. Every time you see a dog, man's best friend, you pet every dog you see on your walk, all that stuff, and that becomes death. Right. And takes everyone out, right? Yeah. So that's a great kind of fear building and terror, because man's best friend becomes your enemy.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And there's wonderful ways to show joy and happiness. We could go down this rabbit hole for a lot.
Yeah.
But these are the kind of things that make cinematography so exciting. And especially when you have a director that really taps into these camera emotion, and then you can add lighting emotion onto it as well. One of the things I did in Crazy Beautiful was specifically when Kirsten Dunst was finally, her stepmother had it with her, Her dad had had it with her, and they were going to send her to a turnabout ranch, right? They were sending her out to the desert where she was going to get detoxed and basically
get her life back
get
on
her
track.
life back and everything. So she came back into the media room to clean up her shit, and that's where Carlos finds her. And she's very fragile, and she's very broken, right? And I did not want her to look beautiful. So I lit her with very harsh light. I didn't even come from the front with it. I came from the side. So her eye was literally casting a shadow on her nose. We call it the eye shadow, right? There was no Renoir there was no Rembrandt lighting where you had the perfect, a triangle in the other eye. It was way sidey and really shadowy and harsh. Really hard light. Because he says, well, let's go out on Sunset. And she's like, what are you talking about? He goes, I love you. And you see the tears come into her eye. And saying I love you to a person that's in front of me that's lit harsh, that's got greasy hair, that does not look attractive at all, takes the lighting emotion and their character emotion to a whole other level, right? And these are the type of things that you really have to, when you're reading the script, go down that rabbit hole. That's what you're supposed to do as a director of photography.
Right.
You're not just supposed to light a scene and everyone look beautiful. There's times when people need to look damaged and fragile and not really at their best. And I remember it so well, Kevin Costner on Swing Vote. He was a drunk, he was a loser, and he lived in a trailer, and his daughter was a better parent than he was. Right?
His character, not
his character.
Kevin.
So how do you take that with the script and with his amazing performance, because Costner is a phenomenal actor, how do I take that to a whole other level? Well, I made the camera handheld, so he was not really, he's unsure of himself. And then I lit him very harshly. And I remember the first 3 or 4 days of him looking at dailies, and he goes, you're really aging me out here and making me look like shit, Shane. And I go, Kevin, you're a loser drunk in a goddamn trailer park.
Yeah.
And he goes, copy that. I said, when you come and you find yourself at the end,
you're going to look like $1 million.
And you go and you do that debate, I am going to quaff you out. I'm going to make the lights soft. You're going to look like a rock star. You're going to look like the movie star that everyone signed up for in this final movement. But until that point, you are going to look haggard. And he really, it took him a while to get it. But this was something that the director and I had already discussed. We knew that this was going to go down, but he had come off of several movies where he looked unbelievable and so heroic and so empowered, and this was definitely a massive departure.
But for an actor, it requires so much vulnerability.
Yeah.
So, especially for a big movie star.
And I think that, as a cinematographer, pushing the actors to understand that you're not doing it because you're a shitty lighter and a shitty DP. You're doing it because the story's telling you to do it.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's the vision that the director wants, which in that case was Josh Stern, I think.
Yeah, Josh Stern.
If I'm remembering.
I lit him with like this super blue-green fluorescence that was way too bright in the kitchen. And, nothing looked
good. Love that. Okay, well, you can tell that we are very passionate about that question. And thanks again so much for submitting that, Patrick. So we're going to stay on the camera. I'm going to go up one question here on I'm curious, this is from Eugene V. Wilson. I'm curious to when Shane started using Sony. I see more Sonys in his videos now. I know he was big on red for such a long time. Is there a video that explains why he made the switch? And Eugene, I'm going to start this conversation before Shane by what I know to be true, and what I know Shane is going to say is that it depends on the project. So it is not about what camera a cinematographer likes per se. I think it's really, I mean, of course you have preference, but I think it's very much about what is right for the project. Is that a correct answer?
Absolutely. And when I was using the red, a lot of my films were very energetic. There was a lot of handheld. There was a lot of embedding the camera, so I had to go with something that was a black box and was very small and lightweight. I was doing a ton of gimbal work, ton of running, fast motion. So I really needed that small, lightweight, compact, camera to be able to tell that. And a lot of the shots I was coming up with were perspectives that a specific, a larger Venice 2 would never get in there. Now, yes, we have the Rialto, but then it's tethered, right? So I have a cord that's attaching it to the brains. That limits mobility, right? Then you have to have somebody wear that or run around with it. So now you have two people in this scenario than just one. And a lot of, when I was doing Tall Girl, there was a lot of dance moves. And this was all about color. So a red camera energizes color, absolutely energizes it. Everything it sees, it just takes it up 3 notches, right?
Is that for each band of colors? So like if
Just color in general.
In general.
It's just more of a colorful camera. So, when I was doing a lot of the
football with
safety, that was very important to have the red sensor because I needed Clemson to be the orange and the deep purple blue, right? And when he went to Clemson, it was those colors exploding. When he was back in Atlanta, in kind of the wrong side of the tracks and the projects and everything, I desaturated the color. I put a lot of green tint into it. I did a lot of baking in. Yes, it's a raw file, but when it's all said and done, we never actually work off of that raw file. We work off of the LUTed image, right? Because time now, going back to the raw file just takes too much time a lot of times on these medium-sized budgets. So you have to go with what you've the LUT that you've already baked in. And then you wiggle it from there.
Manipulate that a little bit.
Yes, exactly. If a shot is way off, then we'll take the time to go back to raw file, but that is a very time-consuming process. So, that kind of was why I went there, and I needed to run with football players. And I needed to be able to have 5 steady cams and 4 gimbals working at the same time. So I needed a lot of cameras and a very small box so we could really be efficient and move quickly.
So back to the question about Sonys and what you're loving about the Sony, and when, for example, that you would choose a Sony camera for a project.
So I went to the big HBO camera challenge where the HBO supports this test. During the pandemic, they weren't able to do it. But this last round of cameras they did after the pandemic lifted. It's a incredibly expensive test. They spend $2 to $4 million on this test.
Oh, wow.
And it showed the Black Magic, it showed the Red Raptor, it showed the Venice 2, and it showed the Alexa.
Now, for everybody's knowledge, let's talk what year this was, just because I know cameras have changed.
2023.
Okay.
The winter of 2023, so 2024.
Okay. So because cameras change so quickly, I just want to give a
Yeah,
baseline.
exactly. Yes, correct. So with that, out of all the cameras, when I saw that, and it's very important to do these tests,
Hmm.
the Sony delivered the best skin tones out of all cameras.
Mm.
Okay. So I was doing a very skin tone centric project called The Perfect Couple for Netflix, where it was Nicole Kidman, Dakota Fanning, this very dysfunctional family on July 4th. We're a wedding. During the rehearsal dinner, the bridesmaid is killed, and it's like, gung, 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 who did it, right?
Yeah.
So we wanted the cape to have that flavor, that richness, that wealth. The home was like, $50 million
Hmm.
right on the water in these lagoons. You wanted to feel that wealth. You wanted to be able to touch the screen. It was dripping with abundance, right? This was the feel of it. So working with Nicole Kidman, Dakota Fanning, Eve, I wanted their skin tones to just be
Uh-huh.
vibrant and just alive and warm. And Roberto DeAngelis and I were the co-DPs on that. We did not do, he didn't do episode 1 and I didn't do episode 2. We did all 6 episodes together
Hmm.
as a team. This has never been done before.
Or very rarely, I
No,
think.
never
Oh, together.
co-DPs
Okay.
together. When Oren Soffer and Greg Fraser
Hmm.
did it, Greg Fraser did it from afar, and Oren was
Was on
boots
set.
on the
Got it.
ground, right?
Got
So
it.
this was a very unique experience. And it was probably one of the most amazing experiences I've ever had as a director of photography because you can really go down the rabbit hole of lighting
Mm.
and iris pulls. The subtlety in this film,
Hmm.
in this series, is so much because I had the time to really dial in the subtle exposures. As they moved, I'm doing third of a stop, half of a stop, full stop, quarter stop, aperture changes. So we can start on a wide shot and end on a 500 millimeter close up.
And it was a dream project for sure. I think
Yes.
everybody would have loved that. But if you don't have that, or if you're on a smaller project, or if you're, one person with a few crew members with you, I think what about the Sony really, in other words, why the Sony for the skin tones,
For the skin tones
for
and
the
its ability of how it saw color.
okay.
Red sees blue as blue and warm as warm. Sony sees blue as blue and sees warm as warm. It sees it very like our eye.
Which is naturally.
Yes, it's very natural.
Okay.
It's not energized, and it just has a beautiful transition from the highlights to the mids and the mids to the shadows, where an Alexa or a Red is going to have a little different transition. The highlights are going to clip a little faster, and the shadows are going to crush a little sooner. So
Got it.
with the Sony, it was just perfect for that specific project. And then I went right into a coming of age movie
Mm-hmm.
where I had a young kid that was like 13 transitioning into 14, and I had Chris Pratt as this Navy SEAL that was coming back, that had gotten injured in battle and was going through rehabilitation.
Mm-hmm.
So this wanted it to be very natural and to be very realistic and feel like there was nothing being energized, there was nothing being turned up just a little bit. And the skin tones were super important as well, because the juxtaposition of when we go to the flashbacks,
Mm.
when he is in battle and flashing back to how he, what happened during that time, it's very crisp and very sharp and very
Mm.
cyan.
Mm-hmm.
So, and slightly desaturated. So, this is where the Sony really handled that very well and gave me the ability to give the elegance of reality of how you see color as with the human eye, and then be able to leverage it by changing my lenses and then changing the aspect ratio, going into the Navy SEAL and the flashbacks.
And I love that because I think that really choosing the tools for the artistry, it's so important to understand all of this detail so that when you're choosing the tools to use, not only are you doing it, and this speaks to purchasing gear, but you're really doing it with the freedom of choice without I own this, and so I have to keep it working.
Correct.
And I think that I know everybody loves gear and wants to buy gear, but I do think from the artistic freedom standpoint, it's so important to not be influenced in that way, to really just say, okay, this is the right tool for the job to serve the story.
Right.
And so I just wanted to add that little
No,
tidbit.
and one thing that I really love is like when I did Into the Badlands, the Red Dragon had just really come out.
Yeah.
And that was the perfect sensor for that story.
Yes.
Because I was looking it was 500 years post-apocalyptic, and the whole world was run by these barons. So I wanted everything that happened after the post-apocalyptic, that the rebirth of grass was greener than we'd ever seen it.
Right.
The trees, the leaves, the sand, the soil was redder than the clay. Everything was just intensified because of what I was just envisioning was what would happen after that. And you're seeing that in Chernobyl.
Right.
Chernobyl, now you're
That's a
seeing
great
pictures,
example.
right? You're
Yep.
seeing pictures of the greenest green that you've ever seen, the darkest earth that you've ever seen. And I referenced Chernobyl, the book that was brought out, that were all these these
Yes.
photographs that were taken after that whole meltdown. And that was my genesis of the idea. The other thing is sometimes budget drives what camera you have to use.
Yes.
And with that, we had a lot of martial arts. And we had to go up to 200, 250 frames per second. And I knew that I had to fuel 2 units. I had to fuel the main unit, and I had to fuel the fight unit. So I wanted a camera that was consistent across both units. And I knew they were going to go up to 250 frames per second. I didn't want to bring a phantom in and that having a whole other color science.
Yeah.
And then the rental on the phantom, then you have to bring a tech down. And we just didn't have the budget for that. So it's trying to find a camera that can be the jack of all trades sometimes. So I knew that there was a binocular point of view a lot in this, where
Right.
the Baron was looking on to his clippers
estate and his
and his estate. So I didn't want to have to get 1,000 or 2,000 millimeter lenses. I knew I could go to 3K on the red. It would zoom in on the sensor, and it would take a 600 mil and turn it into a 1,200 mil. And that was using, again, the science of the camera to then leverage your creativity. So you didn't have to rent that very expensive $2,000 lens. And based on your schedule, we were in Louisiana. We were in thunderstorms. We were constantly shutting the generator down. We would get a day behind, then we'd gain it back. So bringing gear in from Los Angeles is very problematic. You'd bring it in, then you wouldn't use it for 2 or 3 days. Now you're having a rental on a very expensive lens for 2 or 3 more days because weather got in the way. So these are the kind of things that you have to balance as an artist
Right.
and as a technician, right? Because what we do is art and science. And I try to be as budgetary friendly as possible. So I'm putting it all on the screen. And by doing that, sometimes the budget helps you make that decision. Because as it stands right now, this is how it was in 2015,
Right.
then 2016, then 2018, then 2020, then 2021. This is how close all the cameras are looking between each other.
Oh,
Right?
wow.
Now they're so close that the subtle differences that I'm talking with the Sony and the Red, you can make the Red look just like the Sony, but it takes a little more work. So
Right.
will you have that time in the post process to do all that color correction that's going to get it there? Sometimes I only have a week. Sometimes I only have 4 days. Right? So I have to know that. I always ask my post-production supervisor, how many weeks of color correction? If I have 3 weeks, I know I'll be able to use the red and get
Right.
it to that desaturated tone and everything that I'm going to have to do with it. If I only have 4 days, I know I'm going to have to shoot more with the Sony that already gets me very close to what I want to do. See, everything is like, it's a push-pull.
Yes, it's a balancing act. And I think that it's so interesting to hear your process and what's in your head as a cinematographer, because I know that mental stress is real. And everything that you're juggling, budget, having gears sit around, looking at the team, because every producer freaks out when there's gears sitting around not being used, as they should, because they feel like it's wasteful. And there's so many things in the leadership role that cinematographers have to think about, with budgets big or small, that I think it's so important to know how to decompress and de-stress yourself at the end of the day as you're juggling a million decisions with lightning speed.
And you're also going into tax incentive states where you might have 2 to 3 crews deep as excellent technicians, and the other ones are still training.
Yes.
So bringing in a whole new camera system that they're not used to is going to throw inefficiency into your production. So all these things I'm balancing as an artist. I'm balancing the schedule. I'm balancing what my talent pool is. I'm balancing the budget of what I can afford. Does it make sense to be able to have all these day playing lenses, or can I just get all my cameras and all my lenses and say that's the package, and get the camera house to agree on a really discounted, the best amount I can get from the camera rental house, instead of, because when you do day playing, the rates are not the same as the main package.
Right.
So what I try to do is beef up my main package so it can handle a lot of different scenarios and a lot of different scenes, right? And so I'll add macro lenses in there. I'll add different flashback filters. If there's flashbacks, I'll add longer lenses if we're going to be doing some long lens work. It might not be throughout the whole movie, maybe just a third of the movie. But the thing is getting that main package down is very important. So you pack it with as much of the creativity that you're going to use for the whole project, and then minimize how much day playing you're going to do, because that's going to increase your budget as well.
Yeah. So a lot of different things.
Yeah, it's daunting sometimes that you have to think about all these, but this is kind of what I really love to share with all of our members, because these are the things that you have to really drive down on. And I think it is your responsibility as a cinematographer. There's going to be a lot of cinematographers that say, nope, It's just me lensing, and it's just me lighting the scene. I don't have to worry about all that stuff. Well, that's one approach. I tend to be as production responsible as possible
Yeah.
and try to make the team be as efficient. When you have a workflow of where you have all those lenses and they've had all those lenses in prep and they've already worked out all the finite details of how to bring it, how to mount it, how to, like, we used the 25 to 1000 Fujinon, that box lens, twice. But I brought it in on prep so they would prep it so they knew how, because it's a chore to balance that lens on a head and to get all the right protocols of putting that together. But I wanted them to go through that process so I could understand, so they could understand how to be as efficient on the day. Because it's the kind of thing where we're shooting a scene and then all of a sudden you see the sun setting and it's right on the horizon and it's giving us the most amazing sun. Bring out the 25 to 1000. That's going to be something where we're like, go, 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 go. And if they're like, I haven't even seen this, I haven't even taken it out of the box, that's the last thing I want to hear, right? So these are things that you set up for success. When I do camera tests, I do them like I'm shooting the movie. Every producer always comes up to me and says, why are you doing this extensive camera test? Why are you doing all this stuff? And I said, because one, it's like day one of shooting. Day one of shooting, day two are always a little quirky because everyone's starting to understand everyone's personality. We're starting to get the workflow, how everyone's seeing their energy, who's really fast, who's really slow, whatever that is, right? So when you do an intense test day, you already start to have day one not be day one anymore. It's day two, right? The other thing you learn is when I started Love Hard, I wanted all the LA portion to be really like a glass and Summicron and really sharp, very contemporary. And then when she went to Lake Placid, I wanted it to be old Canon FDs that had, weird aberrations and defocusing in the corners and not perfect. Because the guy catfished her into this whole dating thing and online, dating. And when she's catfished, I wanted to see him as imperfect. Right? In her world, she had everything dialed in, and she was thrown into this imperfect world who she eventually falls in love with him. Well, so I arranged this big test. And what I realized right off the bat was every time we switched from Leica to Canon FDs, the FDs, everyone had a different diameter. So then they had to use a different matte box holder.
For each
time.
Wow.
And then every time you change the lens, it required a different iris ring. It wasn't consistent across all the different lenses. Every lens required an iris ring. So you needed 16 different iris rings. So because if you just left that iris ring on, I was thinking I was at a 2 when I was actually at a 5.6. So it's like all these things. So I started to see that this was going to slow us down huge.
Yeah.
Right? If I had not done this and saw how the team was not able to adapt to these different sets of lenses and all the quirkiness that you do with all these reclaimed old fast glass lenses and everything, if I wouldn't have done that, I wouldn't have realized that this was going to be like an anchor.
And so then you needed to make a different creative choice for efficiency.
So what I did is I took the Leica lenses and made that our lenses throughout the whole movie. And then I went to Dave Cole and sent him the footage. And I said, screw it up, detune it in post. And that's exactly what he did. He brought in these aberrations on the corners where you see like the blue and the green and the orange. He made stuff fall out of focus on the edges. He made them imperfect.
Yeah.
And then he added a pro mist effect. So he took a luminance key on the blacks and pushed pushed light into the blacks, which is like a black or white pro mist. And then the other way, you push white into the highlights, and that's like a black pro mist. So he was able to detune the lenses beautifully. And then that enabled me to shoot with one glass set that made my team super efficient, that all have the same iris rings. There was none of this changing over. There was no the multi-diameters, all that stuff. And we had a very successful shoot.
Wow. Well, thanks, Shane. I learned so much on this podcast, and I'm married to you. Okay. Everybody thinks like, oh, we talk about this, but we don't. So this is really fascinating to me too. And I'm really glad we went down the rabbit hole. Okay. We have time for one more question.
Okay.
And we're going to end on the camera question of, if you're trying to get on set to gain more experience in camera departments, what are the best entry points? And does working at a rental house help? And this question comes from Matthew Levine.
All right. So Matthew Levine, yes, the camera house route is absolutely where you want to start. And then you would go to a camera PA. So let's say you're working as a rental house. You're back in there. Your first job is going to be scraping cases and cleaning them with scrubbing bubbles. That's how I trained everyone at Revolution Cinema Rentals when we had that company. You start them at the bottom so you understand the brick and mortar foundation of what a rental house is, as well as you start to respect the gear that you are cleaning and
taking care of.
Which is the ultimate job of a camera assistant, is taking care of that gear, making sure every day when we're in these dusty environments and everything, you're blowing out the cameras, you're making sure everything is clean, everything's functional every day. You know, this starts the respect of taking care of great gear. You also start to learn the respect of a rental house, because a good first AC has so much respect for the rental house gear that comes to them. Because when it's all said and done, these rental houses have invested millions and millions of dollars and hired crews to make sure the lenses are sharp and they're all colonnaded perfectly. And that when you plug in something and you put a battery on and the battery charger, everything works. Everything is finessed with the Teradek. I mean, yes, this is what the prep is. So you work out all these quirks, but the job of the rental house is to provide very, well-maintained gear. So you are, feeling super pumped and positive about going on this journey, right? So then you start to clean lenses, you start to, move up the ladder in the rental house to finally becoming a prep tech. And a prep tech is basically a second AC. You are pulling all the gear, you're making sure everything is matching, you're making sure everything is presented perfectly for when the first AC walks in, he sees, wow, okay? And you can set yourself up for success with this by actually reaching out to your marketing person at whatever rental house, and you say, hey, who's coming in for my prep? Oh, it's going to be so-and-so. And you get their phone number and their email. And then you say, hey, I'm John. I'm the prep tech. And what I've done is I've gone through and I've already labeled all the cases for you. I've already put all the, close focus on them and the T-stops. I've already gone through the filters that are using. I've already made Velcro tabs for your map box. And what do you like? Are you a coffee drinker or a tea drinker? And what do you like for breakfast? And, do I need to send the rental house to pick up any carts? Right? All of a sudden, you're showing second AC characteristics to a lead first AC, and you're not going to last very long at that rental house.
I love
right?
that.
They're going to snarf you up. And by snarfing you up, they're going to try to get you into a camera PA position, or a digital utility, which is the entry level to becoming on a union movie set.
Okay, so question. If you don't go the camera rental house, what other options are there?
Other options.
Possibly. So, like, let's just say that somebody opened the door for you to be on set. Where would you start in the camera department not having a lot of experience?
That would be a friend. So the only other way is, and I've seen this across the board, where a key first AC has a very good friend that he or she has already seen how good they are, attention to detail, really great attitude on, just when they're hanging out. These are wonderful characteristics of a good first AC and a second AC. Somebody that has amazing attitude, somebody that is looking to, as a team player, that shows up way before call and opens the truck and everything. So the kind of thing where you say, hey, let's go for coffee, and he's the first or she's the first one there. Right? These are characteristics that you look at a friend that says, hey, they might have, gotten want to pivot in their career, and you see this, and you
Help
take
them.
all those wonderful characteristics that you
Mhm.
see that they're already doing, and then you can train them on the job.
And I think that this is a really important point because I think that a lot of times we talk ourselves out of something. Oh, I'll never have the opportunity, or I'll never get it, or maybe for whatever reason, I just can't do the camera house route. So I think it's really important to remain flexible and open that everybody's career trajectory and path is unique and different. And there are a variety of ways to go about getting what you want or making a career pivot. And so just don't talk yourself out of it. Follow what you love, ask for the opportunities. Obviously the gear requires experience because you don't want to break something or cost production money, but I think it's really just about advocating for yourself, being honest that you really don't have any experience, and then trying to position yourself in different areas and really be a sponge, observe and learn. And I think one of the best leadership qualities that I could bring in here is really observation. Don't, if you don't know anything on set, just really be the sponge. Don't
Observe. I mean,
observe, don't
watch.
over talk, don't over contribute.
Exactly.
Just really observe people, their positions, and
When I was a set electric, I was one of the best set electrics, and gaffers hired me because I observed.
mhm.
I would watch the DP and I would watch the gaffer, and I would see them looking at something. And when they started looking at a light, I was already over there. And when I'm looking at it, I started becoming a DP in my own mind, right? I started saying, that's too hot. I'm going to already get a double in my hand. And sure enough, I'd walk over and I'd already be on the ladder, and they'd say, all right, let's put a double in that. And the DP would like, that was fast, right? That is observation. That is really surveying the set, understanding the room, understanding the environment, and realizing that there's just some times where you don't need to talk and you don't need to be doing anything. You just need to be watching the set and then engage, right?
But it's also anticipatory. It's anticipating what the need might be or what the problem might be. So sometimes, as you said, you can already be there in action as the ask is coming, which then really makes it exciting for everybody.
And around the camera, a calmness. I mean, calmness around the set is a great thing. But when shit's hitting the fan on the camera and it's not turning on, and this is a problem and that's a problem, calmness is key because you're very close to the actors when a lot of this is going down. The director is always very close by. So you want to be very methodical in how you're kind of problem solving. And it's like you don't do 6 things at once, you do one thing at a time.
And it's about protocols. And I think that this is very, very important. I've observed this a million times on set, but I think that there's a very specific protocol. And this speaks to being left brain and not getting into the emotion. You need to stay into your executive functioning part of your brain, your logical reasoning brain. And therefore, stress cannot impact you as much in the camera department because you really don't have the luxury to be like, oh my God, it's not working.
Yeah.
I don't know what's wrong.
And trust me, I've done that.
But
I've freaked out, and I'll never forget on safety when we were about ready to go, where we had 7 minutes and 20 seconds to shoot a halftime moment with 86,000 screaming fans at Clemson University, and all of a sudden my comms went out and 2 cameras died. And it was like we were literally like, replacing the battery, even though it said it was all bars, and slamming it down and then waiting for the camera to reboot. And we're like, all right, we're going to go in 5. And I'm like, we got 30 seconds still for the camera to boot up, and I'm not seeing the image. And then I'm going to my comms and no one's hearing me. And I'm like, we got to go to the flag system. Everything shit the bed on that exact moment. And these things just happen, and you have to be as calm and cool, because we knew if the comms got taken out, we had the flag system. We had a backup system. So red was we stopped, yellow, we're about ready to go, green, we're going, right? And when all else failed, which it did, we had the backup plans. And I do lighting like that as well. I'll have 2 or 3 different ways to light a scene. So if the blocking all of a sudden takes a different turn than you thought, there's 2 or 3 other ways to be able to light a scene.
And this is where it's so important to manage your own stress, to be a great leader, and to have a rock solid foundation within yourself and be as zen as you possibly can, because things are going to happen. Technology is going to break. You're going to get curveballs. Weather's going to come in. All of these different things impact set. But to be a great leader, you just have to be as calm and methodical in your decision making as you possibly can.
And I'm still working on that.
And you're doing great. You've made great strides.
Yeah, I mean, there's some times where I just, I just don't have the patience.
Right.
And I'm hearing it from the AD, I'm hearing it from the producer, and sometimes I just let the shit roll downhill.
Yeah.
But I realize that I have to be the dam for that. And being the dam is very hard. So the easy way out is just to let it roll downhill.
Right. Which a lot of people do, but that's not being a great leader.
No, it's not being a great leader. And like I say to my crew, I'm going to have days where I'm going to be a great leader, and there's going to be days when I suck.
Yeah.
And I apologize going into it, because it just doesn't have just something that day just didn't click right. And, the weight of the world was on me, and I wasn't able to manage it.
But I think the biggest thing is self-awareness and proactivity with yourself, and things like meditation and exercise, setting yourself up so that when you get to set, you're the best you can be. And then at the end of the day, let's say that everything went wrong and, everybody just had a moment, right, where they were not their best versions, which happens. I think what people really remember is at the end of the day, you get everybody together in a little huddle and you're like, wow, we really got hammered today, right? And it's about making it about the collective and not about, pointing out a specific person and what they did wrong. But it's just like, tomorrow's going to be a better day. We're going to figure this out, and really making it team building as much as you can, so that when everybody goes home, they can leave set on set and not carry stress with them.
I would love that. There was a time when you could do that on set, where you could just pool everyone together and go through your strengths were that day and what your weaknesses were.
And now there's not the time.
And now the producer is looking at their watch. When are we going to get off the clock? When are we going to go? And those team building things are kind of lost. And I would love for production in general and all the producers out there to understand that this is how you keep a super happy crew. And they're not giving us the time to do it.
Yeah.
And this is something that I think we got to find this balance, because we're asked to do the impossible every day. We're asked to do it at a schedule and pace that is unrealistic. We're asked to do it on a budget that is unrealistic for what the vision is. Because even the $200 and $300 million movies don't have enough money because the vision is already
huge.
maxed, right? So, but giving us the time to just regroup with my team each night would be instrumental, because by going back to the camera truck and, you know, enjoying a drink or whatever, or
A kombucha.
Yeah. Yeah, and just reuniting with the team.
Yeah.
Everyone's still coming in and they're putting carts in and they're ratcheting thing. It's not anything that's like, okay, team, let's talk about our strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah.
You can't just pool them together like that.
No, I get it. And I think for everybody listening, because I'm a realist, what I see is it impacts sleep. And what I'm trying to do, so let's say that there's not the time. Let's say that everybody just scatters stressed. And then when you get home, it's really unwinding in a really healthy way and writing it down, talking to somebody if you can about your day, how it went, but not going to bed with all of that stress in the brain, because it actually really impacts sleep.
So what I've done is, instead of having this group session, I've done it in an email. So I've gone back and I've kind of written out what I thought we did really well, what we need to work on
For the next day. Yep.
And then I send that email out to the whole crew. I'll tell what the electrics did well and what we can work on, the grips and camera. So I'm pulling all the departments that are under my purview to be able to tell them what was amazing and what we need to work on.
Right.
And that has been my kind of way of team building. That is not where the producers are looking at their watches and wonder where they're getting off the clock, but we can do it so I can still team build and inspire and build them up and tell them how great, you know, and I try to detail who I saw doing a great job. I'll say, hey, that Jim, I saw him running around when the cart went down and it lost his power. He was, you know, getting that thing powered back up. Thank you so much. Or like the light programmer. My God, you programmed those lights because it was a complete curveball and you made me shine so bright today.
Yep.
Everyone was saying how amazing it looked because of you. You know, so I'll detail at least one person in each department to shine a spotlight on them, so everyone else is saying, "Oh, wow, okay, this is really great. This
And
is a loving, caring environment that people want to be a part of."
Exactly. And that tone is so important. And I think you can also grab people one-on-one as you're working and letting them know, like, hey, you're doing just a phenomenal job today. But it's really looking for the opportunities to praise, looking for the times where people are doing things right. Because I think everybody magnifies the negative, and it's so important to really reset and focus on the positive.
So, Lydia, it's dark outside.
And on that note, we need to end this podcast. So, Shane, thank you so much for another wonderful member question episode. I want to thank our sponsors, Nanlux and B&H, our podcast sponsors, and Hollyland. And I would also like to thank the amazing team that helps us with this podcast. In office, shadow members, they're phenomenal. We could not do this
We
without...
could never do any of this without all of them.
Without all of them. And to also thank our Filmmakers Academy team, because every single day we love working with
They're the rock.
you. And that's it for this episode of the Inner Circle podcast.
Take care.